Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Pumpkin Copter Cast, the only video game show. So, today I am joined by recent PAX attendee and dev showcaser. I'm joined by Kehrann Carr, and we're going to be talking about the game he is currently plugging away at.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Pretty good. So let's just start with a brief introduction of you, if you don't mind.
Okay, sure. As you introduced me, my name is Kehrann Carr. I'm a developer for KUR. I do game design and gameplay programming. I've been developing or coding since I was pretty young, doing game development for about 3 or 4 years now. And yeah, KUR is our studio's first project.
Okay. And when did you first get introduced to video games?
So, when I was very young, so I grew up with an uncle in the house who built computers and sort of refurbished computers. And
Mm-hmm.
one of my earliest memories of video games is watching him play the original Half-Life. Um, and before that, I played some games like GoldenEye on the 64. But when I saw Half-Life, it just blew my mind. So that's really what got me into video games and sort of video game development.
Okay. And what would you say was your favorite game and/or games when you were growing up?
Growing up, I'd say, of course, Half-Life, GoldenEye, the original Doom, all Dooms after that too. Oh yeah, so any old school shooter was my jam.
Okay. And what would you say is your favorite game and/or games now?
Now it's a little bit of variety, so I'll go with a couple of them. One of my favorite franchises currently is Dishonored. I love the Dishonored franchise. It's sort of action RPG. I like Dusk. I like Dusk. This new school, old school retro FPS game, and I really like Overwatch as well.
Okay. Who's your go-to character in Overwatch?
My go-to, I'd say Brig, or like maybe May or Reaper.
Yep. I definitely know what Overwatch is and who those characters are.
Cool.
Anyway, on to the proper meat and potatoes of this game. Like if the world wasn't currently just a big old pile of awful right now, and we all weren't forced to stay in a singular space, and this
Yeah.
were some sort of convention like PAX or something similar, and
Okay.
someone walked up to your booth and asked what KUR is, what would be your like sales pitch you'd give them?
Okay, so sales pitch. I'd say KUR is a fast-paced, retro-inspired FPS with a bit of dark humor and comedy in there. And yeah, you play the role of a space mercenary hired by this sort of evil, all-knowing corporation to clean up their AI problem.
Okay. And where would you say the idea for KUR came? Where did the idea from KUR come from? Was it from like one specific thing, or is it like an amalgamation of various other types of games?
It's sort of a combo of some of my favorite games and a lot of inspiration from some of my favorite movies as well. Um, so basically, the word "cur" is a ancient Sumerian word for the underworld. So there's this sort of blend of like this ancient Sumerian mythology, and I blended it with some of my favorite sci-fi movies, sort of like Event Horizon, The Matrix, and then we just sort of put it into this uh, old school inspired shooter.
Okay. Um. We can like when I was playing at PAX. East not too long ago, I could see like some of the inspirations, like like the first and second Doom. But like, what other games did you think like gave you the idea to make Kerr the way it currently is?
So well, from our enemy design, if you can't tell, Half-Life, of course, is a big inspiration, with its sort of sci-fi vibe and the very diverse enemy set it had. So sci-fi, you already named Doom, Quake as well. I was a huge Quake fan, so there's a bit of like Quake movement. We actually sort of ported Quake movement into Unity to try to get that Quake feel. And then another big one is sort of Duke Nukem. I really liked the sort of attitude of Duke Nukem, where it didn't take itself very seriously. So we're sort of trying to put that in Kerr as well. So yeah, it's sort of this over the top, ridiculous sci-fi um, rabbit hole you go down.
Okay. And was making Kerr a first person shooter, was that always like the idea straight from the get go, or when you like started working on it, did you feel like making it a first person shooter would like suit it better for the type of experience you wanted to make?
So it was always first-person shooter in mind. Like I said, some of my favorite games were Half-Life, Doom. So we just really wanted to sort of bring that back. And games like Dusk and the Medieval, there's a whole lot of them. Strafe. They've sort of revived the genre, so we thought it was a great time to get into it.
Okay, and what made you want to go with the type of visual style that Kerr has?
Okay, so our visual style was sort of stumbled upon, I'd say. We were definitely sort of attempting that crunchy retro aesthetic,
Mm-hmm.
um, but we still wanted some like modern lighting and shadows and animation and things like that. So I don't know. Eventually, we just sort of stumbled into some custom lighting for our shaders and some outlining, and just sort of blended it all with that crunchy retro texture, and that's where we got our current visuals from.
Okay, and without giving too much away, since the first-person shooter genre has like changed by leaps and bounds since the days of the first Doom games, like what type of first-person shooting experience can someone expect when Kerr is out there in the world, ready to be bought and played?
Yes, so first-person shooters have definitely changed since the original Doom, and that's something we've kept in mind. So if you see any videos of Kerr, one of the first things you'll notice is we have a boot, and that makes our movement very fast-paced and very mobile. So you can sort of we call it boot jump, but it's pretty much like a rocket jump, and you can fly and kick across the screen and do all these crazy um, agile movements, but sort of in this retro setting. So yeah, we're definitely pushing the envelope on that retro mechanic, I guess.
Okay. And now, as someone who knows like very little about like the actual nitty gritty of like making games and all that, like what would you say is like the part of Kerr's development that like has caused like the most headaches, like just
Uh,
to get it out there?
yeah, let's see. Um, I'd say the most headaches is sort of getting everything we want to get done with our boot and without giving too much away because there's a lot of mechanics and upgrades that will later come. But just sort of working on all of those and sort of keeping them um, in order. We keep getting uh, implementing really good ideas, but we got to make sure they don't break anything else that's worked. So yeah, it's just a give and take balance on that.
Okay. And is there any part of the game that you were like that when you began working on it, you were surprised as to like how easy it was to implement into the game?
I'd say the original prototype. The game has come a long way since then, but the it still resembles our original prototype and sort of the movement and fluidity that we've tried to go for. Um, and so yeah, that was like I said, a lot of inspiration from that is from Quake and actually trying to port over Quake movement code into Unity. And that was honestly easier than I first thought it would be.
Okay. And from the time the ideas for KUR were first formed, like to the time when it'll be released and sent out there into the world, how long will its like total development time have taken?
I'd say from the start when we started prototyping it, maybe about roughly 18 months from the time it was first an idea. Maybe about a couple years, 18 months to 2 years.
Okay. And now, what platforms do you intend to release it on once it's all set and ready to go?
Um, I can confirm the PC release, definitely. As far as any other platforms and consoles, that's something we're still working on. We hope for the best though, and we're developing for everything.
Okay.
Uh, so yeah.
And yeah, you said you're developing for everything, but is there like is there a particular system that if you're able to, you'd be able to give like first priority to?
So, I wouldn't necessarily say first priority, but a platform that we're very much interested in is the Nintendo Switch. We'd love to be on the Switch and sort of join that short list of FPS games in the market. So yeah, and we think Kerr can run well on there, but the future will see.
Okay. And car game that's inspired by a lot of first-person shooters of yesteryears. Like sometime down the road, when Kerr's been released and bought and experienced, are there any other type of genres you'd be interested in exploring somewhere down the line?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. If we're not doing the first person genre, there's definitely plenty of other things we'd like to look into. The first thing that comes to mind is like a twin stick shooter. We've definitely thought about some ideas for that type of game. Or maybe like a third person action game. I want to say similar to Zelda, but in a completely different light.
Okay. Uh, yeah, and like if by some miracle you were allowed to like develop an installment in like your favorite one of your favorite current video game franchises, which one would you like to throw all of your energy into?
So if I could work on like an installment from one of my favorite franchises, yeah, if Dishonored, if that crew approached me and was like, "Hey guys, we want you to work on Dishonored," I would take that in a heartbeat. Um, that would be really cool.
Okay. And now, just what made like was like game design, game development, and all things video game making related? Was that always like something you wanted to do, or was it just something you thought about and then you realized that I'm pretty good at making games?
I'd say it was always something I wanted to do. Ever since I sort of, like I said, ever since I saw Half-Life and got into video games, in terms of development, I just sort of never looked back. I was like, yeah, I definitely want to do this for a living.
Okay. And just what was like just again as someone who's only been on like one side of this, like what was your experience like as a developer at a convention like PAX?
So that was actually my first experience on the developer side of PAX. But uh, it was my experience was fantastic. I met a lot of great people in the gaming community. I met you. Everybody was excited to try the games out. Um, and yeah, it was fun.
Okay. And now we could move on to the final question, which everyone always understands perfectly. Kehrann, in your opinion, is video games? Hmm? Well, I guess we have our answer there. Oh,
Pretty much. But I I would say more so it has to be interactive. Video has to be interactive to be game.
okay. And with that, we come to the conclusion of this particular episode of the Pumpkin Copter Cast. I'd like to thank Kehrann for joining me and giving us a little inside peek into his upcoming game, KUR, that's spelled KUR in extremely capital letters.
Yes.
And yeah, just if you look for it on Steam, wishlist it, keep an eye out, just follow it, and where any single platform you can.
Yes,
Yeah,
please do. Thank you. Thank you very much. Follow us on Twitter if you want to, at Really Ragdoll.
okay. You heard him. Follow them on Twitter. And if for some reason any of the -7 people listening to this like enjoyed what they heard, you can you can like and subscribe the Pumpkin Copter Cast on the YouTubes. You know, press that bell icon, all that, and for some and if like after you're done buying KUR, once it's released, if you want to give me some money, you can go to patreon.com/thepumpkincoptercast. What's a pumpkin copter? Why is that the visual icon of my video game show? No one can really know. And yeah, this has been the Pumpkin Copter Cast, and as I am bound by a blood oath to say at the end of every show, have a gourd day, everyone.
Thank you.